What's up, Owl House fans? Angel here, and in light of the new Season 3 finale, Watching and Dreaming, some new things have been unearthed about Hooty and his species. In this video, I'm going to be explaining what Hooty is and where his powers might come from. So sit back, enjoy the ride, and try not to get creeped out and grossed out, the same way I was. I feel your pain, Luce. I feel your pain. So, let's start with what we know. Hooty is a long owl tube looking thing, honestly more reminiscent of a bird tube rather than an actual owl. And he seems to be an enigma to this whole series as a whole. But what if I told you I can explain this, or at the very least attempt to explain this thing? Sit back and relax and let's get started. Given that the Titan is hundreds if not thousands of years old, it's not hard to see that Hooty's lineage is about the same age. This is proven by the fact that when Luce sees the Titan for the first time, he has a Hooty-like creature coming out of his eye socket. I know, kinda gross, but it's akin to a worm coming out of an apple. If you think about it, I don't think this imagery was accidental. I think it was meant to show that there is a parasitic relationship going on with these two. When the Titan died, there needed to be a decomposing organism to, well, eat the remains. And as gross as that sounds, I think it checks out. We know that the Titan we meet in Watching and Dreaming is actually the most recent Titan to have died in this whole series. And if we take evolution as an example, which we really should considering that witches may be an evolution of the Titan, I'll get into that later, that would explain or at least justify the fact that Hooty, or at least Hooty's species, has evolved to, well, feast on the carcass of the Titan. And if that's so, all the other Titans that have come before him have to have been decomposed some way too, so it's safe to say that maybe Hooty's entire lineage and ancestry was around as long as the Titan, which kinda would be pretty cool in my opinion. This would support why Hooty is so powerful in the first place and why, you know, he's an enigma unto himself. He's just as old as the Titan and pretty powerful. And I'm gonna do my very best to try and explain why he's so powerful. So a lot of people seem to think that Hooty is just an endless bird tube with no limitations, but this couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, sure, he does seem endless considering how much this guy can stretch, but Hooty does have limitations, and I can explain why. In order to do that, I'm gonna have to jump into some science though. Okay, so the law of conservation of mass states that matter cannot be created nor destroyed. Wait, please don't click off the video, I swear this has relevance. And before I get some comments explaining, well, this is a kid's show and magic is just created out of thin air, you're reading into it too much, you couldn't be farther from the truth. In the first couple episodes of Season 1, we see Ida explain that magic doesn't just come out of thin air by waving your hands in the air.
Humans think magic is made out of thin air, but that's stupid. Everything comes from something.
It's actually a byproduct of a bile sac next to a witch's heart. In that same vein, when we see Luce draw a light glyph for the first time, we see that the leaf she draws it on crumples up and turns into a ball of light, further proving that the law of conservation of mass is still right. The law of conservation of mass states that matter can't be created or destroyed, but it can change. So now that we have these two evidence points, let's use that logic on Hooty. Hooty can't just be an endless bird tube. That just wouldn't make any sense if the law of conservation of mass is at play, and if Hooty is indeed deriving that power to create a seemingly endless vessel for himself, it needs to come from somewhere. So let's jump back to the theory that Hooty's ancestors were indeed decomposing organisms for, well, decomposing Titans. Also, the reason I keep saying ancestor so much is because I don't think the demon coming outside of the Titan's eye is actually Hooty. I feel like at some point Hooty would have mentioned that he met King's dad, but maybe I'm giving him too much credit. I mean, it just doesn't fall in line with his character to keep that from King. Also, this demon looks a little different, right? Like, it's a different shade and it's uncanny. It doesn't really look like the Hooty we know and love, or love and hate considering how you feel about this bird too, but this is where things get a little weird for me, but I can still see it working. So when Hooty busts out of the owl house and turns into the, well, Porta Hooty reporting for duty! Oh my god, I'm never doing that again. We see these disgusting organs coming out of the hole of the door that he created, just pulsating and stuff. And as you can see, Luce and King are never going to be the same again after this traumatic incident, but I think this proves my theory, my friends. I know, it may sound like a long shot, but when we see Hooty, take off his skin and leave it out to dry, oh my god, he is so gross. We can totally see that he doesn't have any organs that he needs to use or abide by. I mean, this guy breathes into the camera without lungs. What is he? He's just a spinal cord and a skull with soulless black vacant husks for eyes. It makes no sense. But back to my point, this just proves that I don't think he has any organs. I don't think he needs organs to survive. I think that skin suit he wears is really just well, to make people feel a little bit more comfortable, because if that thing was like rolling around the Owl House, I wouldn't want to be there either. Now we have to explain what these organs are inside of the Owl House, the fun part. But this further begs the question, whose organs are these inside of the Owl House? I mean, if they're not Hooty's, then whose are they? And this, my friends, is the point where I say that these are the Titan's organs. Yes, he is storing the Titan's organs inside of the Owl House. I know that sounds gross, but just hear me out. Hooty is no stranger to eating things whole, and if my theory is correct and he was a decomposer of the Titan, he was probably eating the Titan's muscle fibers and organs whole too. Yay, that's so gross, but I mean, it would make sense. We've seen Hooty unhinge his jaw before when he was eating the fire bees and when he was transporting Luce and Amity into the Tunnel of Love. Since Hooty doesn't have organs, it's not a stretch to say, pun absolutely intended, that these are the Titan's organs. He needs to stockpile them somewhere, and why not the Owl House? So, pretty cut and dry, right? I mean, he feasts on these organs for years and he transforms that energy into elongating his ever-growing bird suit thing. But I know what you're thinking. I don't just eat steak and spaghetti and magically grow 5 inches taller. If I could, I would achieve my dreams of being in the NBA. And to that I would say you're absolutely right. Keyword here being magically. This wouldn't be the Owl House without magic anyway, so let's explain that. So, it's heavily implied in the show that witches are derived in some way, shape, or form from the Titan. Kinda like humans coming from the primordial soup inside of the sea and, you know, evolving from fish to humans and legs and whatnot. You get where I'm going with this. And we definitely know that the witch's magic at the very least is derived from the Titan. I mean, it is very, very heavily implied. Like when Ida shows us this diagram of a witch's bile sac, it's kind of odd, like, it's jarring, like, why is it green, why is it there? It looks like it was, like, added on later. And that would make sense if it was magic derived from the Titan over an evolution of millions of years. First of all, let's talk about the coloration of the bile sac. It's green. You'd expect it to be red considering it's right next to the heart, but it's not. It's a green bile sac next to a red heart. And the only other time we see another green organ? Yep, you guessed it, the Titan's heart. And it's explicitly stated in Watching and Dreaming that the Titan's power and magic comes from his heart.
Come on, Ida. You know where magic comes from. From the heart!
And if the Titan's heart is anything like the real-life circulatory system in a human, well, it's a safe shot to say that it was pumping out all this magical bile through the Titan's entire body. Scar tissue, regular tissue, muscle fibers, and guess who was chomping out it all? You guessed it, Hooty. Hootcifer, this owl tube. And if Hooty's ancestors were chewing on decomposing Titan corpses from the start, it's safe to say that they would learn to evolve and harness this power, this magic coming from their bodies. And, well, I think that would explain the elongated tube man and how he transfers his energy into being somewhat seemingly endless. And my friends, there you have it, my half-baked attempt at how this thing even exists and how it is a seemingly endless owl tube. I mean, hey, I could be wrong. He could just create matter out of thin air, but I mean, I like to try and explain it through the show's logic, and I hope I did a good job. If not, you can go ahead and flame me in the comments, but I wanted to give my 2 cents and explain this cryptid of a creature. Don't even get me started on the fact that he was probably munching on the Titan's organs because, well, as you can see here, he has rows of teeth inside of him. So that would kind of throw my entire theory out the window that these are the Titan's organs, but we're not going to talk about that. Also, if you look a little closer, there is another Hooty inside of Hooty. I'm done. I can't do that. But remember, that's just a theory. A film!